Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about rumors and dreams again. And today we're in my home studio, so things look a little different. It's probably going to be a little better sound quality. But again, I'm just going to be explaining and discussing some concepts that are built into these horns. And I won't be playing anything, and I'm not really going to be showing you any horns. So just know that this is going to be another conversation about rumors and dreams trumpets. So the big thing that is innovative in these horns and has not been discussed much in the past, unless you follow my Instagram and my Facebook very closely, you probably haven't seen the brass components. And I'm not talking about the metal brass, but I'm talking about B.R.A.S.S. And if you go to the Rumors and Dreams page, which I'm on right now, and you scroll down, you can see a section that talks about brass. It says, what is brass technology? B.R.A.S.S is Bell Resonance Antinodal Stabilization System. And one day I came up with that. I don't know where. I had always been thinking about bell resonance and how that is really affected by the antinodes and the high pressure zones in the tubing. And the whole purpose of preventing the antinode from exerting pressure on the tubing wall and transferring that energy is to stabilize the horn. So it made sense. This is a system to stabilize the sound wave, and we're specifically targeting antinodal areas, and the goal is bell resonance. So it all kind of ties together. I was surprised that brass actually could be the acronym, but regardless, brass components are essentially the pieces that I design of the trumpet that can be added on or modified if I'm not going to design the trumpet from the ground up. And what I mean by that is, on the Summit series and the Muse series, I literally designed pretty much every single component from the ground up with standing wave efficiency technology and bell resonance technology. So the goal there is to make everything as efficient as possible so that we don't have the antinodes exerting enough pressure on any of the tubing wall or even parts of the bell, so that it would transfer the sound wave energy into motion. And a lot of you guys will get lost in this and you'll say, oh man, I just can't follow it. Jason talks about this stuff and it's just too much. And maybe that's where some of the criticism comes from, right? Is like, maybe it seems like it's over your head. But if you take it real slow, I'm not saying anything really complicated. Really what I'm talking about here is we're putting energy into the instrument in the form of a sound wave. And that sound wave, we can measure how much energy we put in and how much came out. And we can do that with a mechanical driver. You can also do it with a human body, but it's much more difficult. So regardless of how you measure it, the fact is, if you improve the integrity of the standing wave by preventing it from creating motion or vibration in the instrument, except where you want it to resonate, the bell, that's why we call it bell resonance, then you're going to have more stability, a much easier playing instrument, and you'll also have more projection, better dynamic range and control of that range, and also in almost all instances you'll have a better control and range in terms of the actual range of the instrument, so from low to high. So bell resonance antinodal stabilization system, BR.A.S.S components, are designed to be added to some traditional design. I personally designed them many years ago. I've been designing them for 30 some years, and the first thing that I really created was a sleeve on the mouthpiece, which now you've seen has been copied by tons and tons of people. And I wasn't the first to put a sleeve on the mouthpiece, although I may have been the first to market a sleeve on the mouthpiece. And then I saw Curry came out with them soon after. And now the list is very long of people that have created that. But for all I know, maybe somebody came out with it 50 years before I was born. I have no idea. So I don't take any credit for that. But for me personally, the first piece of brass components that I ever created was the mouthpiece sleeve. And I did that because it seemed to be the most logical, easy application. Add mass to that so that the antinode, when there is an antinode in that area, it doesn't set the mouthpiece into vibration. And the common argument I get to this, which I don't get why people have to argue it all the time. Anyhow, you could just try it and play it and see if it works. But the argument I get from people who don't try it, the online argument, right, is that the mouthpiece doesn't vibrate ever. A lot of people say, well, the mouthpiece doesn't vibrate, so why would you need that? Well, you may not notice it vibrating, but it does. And on certain partials, where we have an antinode right in somewhere in the mouthpiece, then it does in fact vibrate. To broaden this a little further, the instrument is, a fixed length, right? And let's say it's 6 feet long. It isn't, but let's just say that's the length. When you play the fundamental, then you have an antinode right in the middle of the instrument, which would be at 3 feet. And that antinode is a high pressure zone. So the ends of the instrument, the bell and the mouthpiece, let's just say it's those, it's actually a little bit different than that. The bell and the mouthpiece then are the nodes, and the nodes are where you have really low pressure. You don't have high pressure exerting. The middle, the antinode, the part in the middle, is where we have that high pressure zone. So the middle of the instrument at 3 feet, now there's enough pressure on the inside due to the standing wave that if you have enough amplitude in that wave, it will exert enough force to overcome the inertia of the tubing wall. That's a fancy way of saying, it's an acoustics language way of saying, you can make the tubing move. And when you make it move, it degrades the wave. And the more the tubing wall moves, the less integrity you have in the original wave. So if you're playing a really lightweight horn that vibrates in your hands, when you play different notes, you can feel it vibrate here and there and all over the place. And some of you play on those horns. Then you're playing on a very low efficiency instrument. And the reason that you don't have this consistent stability and consistent sound quality on every note, some notes sound different than others, is because some notes may actually have more inertia than others based on where the antinode lands. So if that antinode on a lightweight horn lands in an area where it's really thin and there's no bracing or anything else, then you can have less integrity in the wave. And if you play the next partial up, then they all stack up a little further. And if now the antinodes are landing maybe just by chance on a couple areas that are braced, now you can have a situation where you have more integrity in the wave, and then the tone quality is different and it's actually easier to play. And this explains why a lot of trumpets, you can have an issue playing at the top of the staff or just above it, like F, G, or A at the top or above the staff. A lot of trumpets, B-flat trumpets, have this issue. And when you go to play one of those notes, now you have first the intonation issues just coming from the intonation of a brass instrument, which is not equal temperament, because we can't tune every string. But then you also have the issue where now one of the notes may actually have more stability than the other because there's more inertia and the instrument is vibrating more or less based on where the antinodes land. And this can be complicated to imagine, but remember when I said it was a 6 foot length and the middle was vibrating at the fundamental. When we play the next partial, now you have 2 antinodes. A partial over that, 3. Every time another partial comes into play, you play a higher note, then you have another one. And what I mean by partials is, on a B-flat trumpet, a pedal C is your fundamental. So that's where you have 1 antinode. When you play C at the bottom of the staff, now you have 2. And when you play G, you have 3. C in the staff, you have 4. And then E, G, B-flat, C. So you can see we start to get a lot of partials. If you were to divide the horn by 6, 7, or 8 and figure out where those antinodes are, sometimes they'll land on a brace, sometimes they don't. And if they do, if more of them do, let's say 3 of the 8 antinodes landed on braced areas, and then the next partial up, only 2 out of 9 landed on braced areas, then you're going to have a very different feeling of consistency. Well, you won't have consistency. You'll literally feel like one note is stable and the next note is a mess. And this is exactly one of the reasons it happens. There are other reasons as well, but in terms of discussing brass components, and again, you can go to the website yharrelson.com, and you can see on the Rumors and Dreams page, if I go straight up to the top and I click on instruments and below that Rumors and Dreams, that's how I got here. So essentially, Brass components are usually not really useful or necessary on the Summit series and on the Muse series because they were designed from the ground up. But on any instrument where I use drawn lead pipes or traditional components, like on the Rumors and Dreams trumpets, then brass components are going to make a huge difference because I'm essentially focused on bell resonance and standing wave efficiency. And in a drawn lead pipe, I can't make that lead pipe in such a way that it can resist those high pressure zones of antinodes. Because I can't, then we have a situation where I may want to add some mass to some areas to improve it. Now, on the Rumors and Dreams trumpets, I've done that in quite a few different places, but I did it in a way that flows with the instruments. So the receiver is one of the brass components. I designed it in such a way that it will resist the energy from antinodes. With the bracing around the valve casing, which you'll see is very different from probably anything you've ever seen, the way I've braced the horns. And then again, at every place where there could be a coupler, I added one of these components. So at the end of the lead pipe, we have one. At the beginning of the tuning slide, where the coupler is a brass component. So, and the same on the bottom side of the tuning slide, the same at the tube that the male bottom leg goes into from the tuning slide. So that tube all the way to the valve casing, I have one. The bell coupler has one. And other components that are brass components are, of course, the finger buttons, the top caps, the bottom caps, which are things we call the mod kit, which we've offered for many years. It's really one of our first products we ever offered. So those components are also brass components. And when you are buying a mod kit from us, and you'll buy it and you'll take your old caps off and you put the new ones on, and you'll say, oh wow, these are tighter than I expected, right? They may not be so tight you can't get them on, but they're definitely tighter. That tightness is directly related to the efficiency. The more tight we can make that connection, the more inertia we're adding in that area, and the more we're resisting that energy transfer into vibration. So when you buy a mod kit, you're getting that. And the HEVs, the high efficiency valve stems, I recommend you take the aluminum stems off your horns and you put on the brass ones. They're brass, but they're also brass components, like the acronym and the metal. And those are specifically designed to really add stability, especially to horns that have been played for quite a while and have worn some space between the piston and the casing. Because you can have the antinodes vibrate the actual piston in the casing, which happens quite often on certain partials. It'll happen. Sometimes people will come in with the horn and they'll say, I don't know why, but this one note, and it tends to be like a B below high C or around there. They'll say, yeah, I have a problem with that note, or higher notes like a G or an A, like above high C. So a lot of times it is literally just one of the pistons is vibrating, and it can be very high frequency, so you don't notice it. But adding HEVs can eliminate that problem simply because it adds enough inertia that now there's not enough energy or amplitude in the wave to really set that into motion. And if you can prevent breaking that inertial point, then you're going to have a more stable, more even playing instrument. So the brass components, the acronym bell resonance antinodal stabilization system components, long word, so I just say brass, those were specifically designed for Rumors and Dreams. To take it one step further, they also are different on each of the horns. So if you remember in the last video, I talked about how Rumors is not as efficient and doesn't project as well as Dreams. And that is simply because I want it to be less efficient in some ways, essentially because a lot of times lead players want to feel some of the vibration in their hands, and also they want to hear the sound behind the bell. Now when you play a trumpet that's very high efficiency, meaning the energy is getting all the way to the bell and then it resonates, in those situations a lot of people have a hard time at first getting used to the projection, because now the sound is going out the bell more than it was before. When the entire horn can vibrate because we have inertial issues, we don't have enough stability in the horn, then you can actually hear the sound emanating out of the tubing walls, and it sounds more present to the player when the horn is less efficient. It sounds much better to the audience when it is more efficient. And you have to decide, how much do you need and how much do you want to give them, the audience? And this is where things can get a little bit tricky at first, because if you pick up a horn that's high efficiency and you're used to playing on one that isn't, then what you're going to experience is all the sound go out. And if you're not in a room that will reflect that sound back to you, you may not like the horn. You may think it doesn't play well. You may say, wow, this horn is not very responsive. And I've heard that thousands of times. This horn is not very responsive. And I'll say, oh, really? Why don't you just turn 90 degrees to this part of the room? And in our showroom, you can pretty much do this anywhere and it works. But in a lot of rooms, you turn a different direction where you're going to get some reflection, and then they'll say, whoa, there's way more sound than I expected. And they turn back the other way and they say, why is it that I can't hear it the way I think I'm going to hear it? And that's exactly why. It's because if the sound is literally bleeding out the tubing on the player's side of the bell, the player does get a different experience than if it's projecting more out. And it only takes a couple days to really get used to a horn that projects more. One thing that can really help that is to play in a room that has some good reverb. Don't play in a room with a lot of carpet and draperies and low ceilings if you're trying to get used to this, this change. And even a better, I guess, maybe recommendation is try to find a room that you practice in on whichever horn you're using that does give you a fair amount of reverb, enough to where you can still hear a crisp attack and know you're playing in time, but at the same time you get enough feedback that you don't feel like you're blowing into a sock or something like that. And one of the worst things you can do is practice in a practice room in most universities and colleges, because they design them to be dead sounding rooms, and they're so dead that you don't get any feedback, and a lot of trumpet players will overblow in those situations. Okay, so we talked about the brass components. You guys are probably going to have a lot of questions about this. So this video is going up just 2 days before the launch. So if you do have questions, feel free to give me a call. Our number is 303-657-2747. I want you to understand how all this works and what you're getting into. So you can ask as deep a level of questions as you want, but I want to be able to help you before the launch, because October 4th, Wednesday morning, the launch does happen. And remember, there's a limited number of people that can order these horns, and an even more limited number of people that can get the pre-order discounts. So I want to make sure you don't miss out on any of that if you are ready to move forward with a great playing new horn. If you did not see the video before this, the origins of Rumors and Dreams, I recommend you go back and watch it. There I talk about really how I came up with the names, I should say, for Rumors, which is the lead horn, lead and commercial, and Dreams, which is your all-around horn. And I talk about how I designed them and why I designed them, which was basically all based on my experience as a trumpet designer and a scientist studying physics of sound, and at the same time taking all your feedback into consideration. And I'm talking like 3 decades of feedback from you guys. And I'll finish up by saying, I was talking about how the components are different on Rumors and Dreams, the B.R.A.S.S components, the B.R.A.S.S components. They are different, but they actually look identical. So the ones on the Rumors trumpet are just thinner and lighter. They add a little more inertia. So we want these to be better playing than you're going to get from like an artist series from one of the top manufacturers, the big manufacturers. And then on Dreams, they do add more mass, so it does add a little more of the weight. But neither of these horns are heavy at all. They're going to be easy for pretty much everyone to play. I mean, we do have 70 and even 80-something-year-old clients playing on Summits and Muses, and most of them don't have any problems. But if you want something that is comparable to a Bach or a Yamaha or in that kind of range, then these are the horns that you're going to want to step into first. So I want to thank you for watching. I'm really excited to launch these. I've put a lot of work into it, And Jen and Christine have given me a lot of ideas and feedback in the process of designing these. And I'm keeping the whole thing kind of, a secret until the release in a couple days. But in a couple days, you'll get to see the horn or horns, and you'll get to hear them. And if you're in the Denver area or you can get here, I highly recommend you come visit, because we do open houses regularly, and it would be a great idea for you to come for either the next open house, which I think is in, what is it, October 17th through the 20th or something like that. You can look on the website. But yeah, I think it's October 17th through the 20th is the next open house reservation week. Or if you can make it sooner or even after that, you can do a private tour and spend some one-on-one time with me or Christine to try the horns and get to see everything and see how we do things at Harrelson. So just give us a call or email us at harrelsonstrumpets@gmail.com, and we'll be really happy to answer your questions and just help you guys step up into something that's going to be better or easier to play, because that's the entire goal here, is to give you the options and the solutions to improve playability at any age and any level. So if you have Grammys, you could still step up. And if you're a comeback player in your 70s or 80s, and I have very close relationships with hundreds of clients in their 70s and 80s that we have helped, both on the mouthpiece side, on mod kits, on even understanding how to get your embouchure back in shape and the physics of that, and of course getting into new horns. And remember, these horns can be played by anyone. So we have a lot of students who are playing on summits as well, and there's no reason the Rumors and Dreams can't be a horn that you play in high school or college as well. Great. Well, I will see you for the next video tomorrow.